Hi, 2-3, welcome to math. So yesterday we did basic identifying fractions. A lot of you did really well. Some of you were still getting a little bit confused with making sure that you were counting the total number of parts. But that's okay because overall we did a great job, and now when we keep practicing this week, you're just going to get better and better at it. But I think for the very first day, especially learning this on Google Classroom, you guys did amazing, okay? So we're going to keep up with fractions, but now we're bringing in Eureka in regards to fractions. So let's go over our instructions. The very first thing is you're going to watch my video on how to complete the lesson. Then you also have the second video from YouTube, which is right down here on lesson 9. And then you're going to be completing the problem set from lesson 9. As always, if you need help, you're going to message us. Don't submit your work if you're confused. You could reach out to us and we will help you. I also put the link here. When you click it, it'll open to this, and you just scroll to until you find lesson 9 for module 8, and then that is just going to be right down here is another resource for you on how to complete your work, that if just in case you need it. Okay, so this is what we're doing today. So again, one big thing we talked about with fractions, we started to talk about with fractions yesterday, is that in order for it to be a fraction, it has to have equal parts. If the parts are not equal, then you do not have a fraction. So a lot of the work that we're doing today is going to be making sure we're identifying when those shapes are split into equal parts, okay? Because again, it is not a fraction if it's not equal. It's that simple. It has to be equal. So let's look at what number 1 wants us to do. It's saying for us to circle the shapes that have 2 equal shares with 1 share shaded. So we're looking for the shapes that have 2 equal parts pretty much, and one of those parts is shaded in, and we need to circle it. So let's start with the very first one. We do see here that there are 2 parts, and yes, they're both equal, okay? However, one of them is not shaded, so I cannot circle it because it told me in the directions one part has to be shaded. Now I'm going to come here. There are 2 parts, but this is definitely not equal. And because it's not equal, like we keep talking about, it is not going to be a fraction. I come here, we have 2 parts. Yes, they're equal, and one is shaded. So this is something that I would be circling. And the last one has 1, 2, 3 parts. Yeah, they're equal, but like we talked about in the directions, they're not asking us for 3 equal parts, they're asking us for 2 equal parts. So right now, this is the only one that we would need to circle in this type of question. You're going to see this type of question later on. That's why I wanted to go over this. And now let's look at number 2. Now it's telling us to shade 1/2 of the shapes that are split into 2 equal shares. Now, what that means is we're looking at all of the shapes here that they put here, all of these shapes. We're going to look at one at a time. And whatever shapes are split into 2 equal parts, we need to color in 1/2 of it, 1 part. If it's split into 3 parts, we're not doing anything. If it's split into 4 parts, we're not doing anything. We are only touching it if it is split into 2 parts, and those 2 parts are equal, okay? So there's going to be 2 different ways that you could do the shading. You could choose to do the drawing tool, and you could just make it thicker when you shade it in. You have that option. Or you can also use the markup, which is the highlighter. So I'm going to show you how that would work. And you have that as well. And you would go to box highlighter, and then you just choose your color. So when I start with A, I see that this is split into 2 equal parts. Notice how they're equal. Okay, if I were to flip it over, it would be one on top of the other. So that's equal. So all I have to do, because I have 2 equal parts, is I'm going to shade in one side. This is why I like the highlighter. It's the best one for when you have shapes like rectangles and squares and things like that. It won't necessarily always work so perfectly on circles, but if it's hanging out over that a little bit on yours, that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to be upset about it because it's easier for you to highlight with this. But again, you can use the drawing tool as well. So this would be an example of what they want you to do, okay? Then I would come to B. Again, I have two parts, and yes, they're equal. So because there's two, like it told us in the directions, and they're equal, I need to shade in 1/2 of it, okay? 1/2, meaning one part. So again, this is what I mean by the markup tool. Because it's like this, you'll see that it's going to hang over a little bit, but again, that's perfectly okay, okay? And I'm going to do one more with you. Now C says 1, 2. Two parts, not equal at all. So because they're not equal, we're not doing anything. We're not shading anything because we are only allowed to shade one part if it's equal. Okay, this would not be a fraction because it's not equal. So if it makes it easier for you, then you could just cross it on out so you don't confuse yourself, okay? And that's what you're going to do as you keep going through the rest of these shapes. You're looking for two equal parts. Two equal parts. And when you find a shape that has two equal parts, you're going to shade in one of them. Okay? All right. So that's that. Now on this page, you are going to need, there's this big word right here that I'm going to tell you because this is a word you're going to use in 3rd grade. Partition. Okay, partition. Partition just means that you're going to split the shapes to show halves, and then you need to shade 1/2 of it. So now they're just giving you these shapes, but nothing is split up yet. You need to split them up into halves, okay? So you're just going to go to your drawing, and I look at this. Now be very careful, because if I were to do this, oh, well, I split it up into 2. No. Remember, it has to be equal. This is clearly not equal, okay? So you need to make sure that you're splitting up that shape into 2, okay? And it has to be equal. So I'm going to come around this part, and I'm going to just go across as best I can. It's okay if it's a little wobbly since you're using your hand and it's going to be a little wobbly like that. And you're just going to split it, and then that way it's equal, okay? Also, when you're done with that, you are then going to color it in. So also, like I told you, you have the option of using your drawing tool to just shade it in if you want. That's perfectly okay too. So you could do that as well, okay? So this is all you have to do here, is you're going to take all of these shapes and you're going to split them. So let's try one more. So let's come here. So I'm going to take this shape and I'm going to split it. Remember, I wouldn't come over here and put a line right here because that's not equal and you're not going to get that right. You have to make sure that you're splitting it equally, that wherever you choose to split it, it's going to be equal, okay? And once you make that line, you are then going to just color in 1/2 of it, okay? And again, you could choose to use the highlighter, the box highlighter, which is really good for the rectangles and the squares. And that's it. So for the rest of these, again, you're just going to split them into 2 parts and shade one of the parts. And please, please, please make sure they're equal, okay? The last page is pretty much the same exact page as the very first page. It's just more practice. But the directions are the same in regards to the very first page. So you would just go back up to the very first page if you needed help. But that's all it is. Just pay attention to the directions again, but they're the same. Okay? And that's all you're doing today. So again, a lot of practice with making sure that our shapes have equal parts in order to be a fraction. And you're also practicing how to split these shapes now into equal parts, into halves, and shading that one part to show 1/2. If you need any help at all, you're confused, you want me to work with you, message me and I will gladly do so.